Well, to talk about all of this and get in some more perspective, Parvez Damania, aviation expert, is joining us. Ajay Avtani, editor of Live from Lounge.com, and Amit Singh, founder, Safety Matters NGO, and former head, Airline Ops and Safety. All three of you, thank you so much for joining us. Parvez Damania, let me come to you first. We've seen, obviously, the fuel prices are at an all-time high, including the ATF fuel prices. And at this point in time, there seems to be no respite in sight in terms of the high prices that we're seeing. What is your own perspective on the impact of this?
No, I think the impact of this is going to be very, very bad for the aviation industry. The fuel prices have just gone absolutely through the roof. And I think this is the time the government has to pitch in, come forward, even the state government, central government, and come and give some respite to the industry. Today, Indigo results have come. They're very, very bad because of the high cost of fuel. You were saying on the channel that 40% of the cost of the fuel, that is absolutely correct. But that was about a year and a half ago. Now with the new fuel prices, I don't know what is the percentage of the cost of the fuel. So this is going to impact the aviation industry very badly. The second problem is the dollar. The dollar is rising. Lease rents are in dollar, maintenance is in dollar, maintenance is in dollar, spare parts. So that's also going to affect. So I think the government has to consider the aviation industry as an infrastructure industry. The government has to come forward to support the industry. Otherwise, ultimately, what will happen, the cost of the fuel will translate into higher ticket price and will affect the consumer. If the government wants to support the industry, and even the state governments, the story of aviation fuel coming under VAT has been going on and on and on. So it's nothing's happening. The state governments also have to realize that the more airlines come into the state, more the aviation industry grows, it will help the state. So I think this airfares are going to keep on going up. And I don't think the aviation, even with the airfares going up, the economics of the airline may not be able to improve so much because the airfares going up will not really compensate the cost of the fuel.
Yes, absolutely. In fact, I think, Parvez, some of the states have reduced the VAT, but obviously nowhere commensurate with what is perhaps needed at this point in time. But Ajay, let me come to you here. How do you think these sky-high prices that we are seeing, and now especially with no respite or no, timeline as to when they're going to come down, the impact on demand? Because this is the summer season, usually when we see a lot of demand. Demand has been building up, all the pent-up demand from COVID. But now with these levels of prices, what do you think of the demand?
Hi, Avni. I don't think at this point of time the demand is affected at all. People are trying to make good of the last time of the past 2 years, whether it be in the personal lives or the professional lives, and a lot of people are continuing to travel at this point of time. Having said that, the airlines are aware of the fact that they can't push the envelope too much before it breaks. And that was echoed by the CEO of Indigo in his media call yesterday, the analyst call yesterday after declaring the results, where he said that, the fares are going to go another 10% up at some point in time, but they have to be careful because they can't continue to do this where to a point where demand will evaporate. So yeah, at this point of time, I don't think there is any effect on demand. People are taking it on their chin and continuing to travel.
Amit Singh, coming to you here, just in the past few weeks, we've seen multiple instances coming in of, where safety of passengers has been compromised, where the kind of, for example, yesterday, SpiceJet, there was a malware attack. And those sort of instances. Earlier also, there have been several reasons as to why passengers have been left in the lurch as well. The DGCA has now gone ahead and said that airlines need to ensure that they don't sell unserviceable seats because it compromises the safety of passengers. Do you think that this kind of pressure is building more and more on the airlines to maintain the level of service and offset the costs at the same time?
A good example is Indigo, wherein the culture and the standards are such that they haven't compromised in terms of cabin appearance or the aircraft as such, even though they haven't made profits or in losses, but that is one thing they have tried to maintain. That is a brand. So it depends on the airline culture. What the regulator can do is only with respect to the airworthiness aspects, whether the seat is reclining or not reclining, it can be locked in the upright position. That is where the regulator comes in. So if it is reclined in the upright position, you can still sell it. But from the service point of view, it is not a good idea for over 3 or 4 hours to sit in an upright position. So that is what the airline has to look at it. Are you willing to sell that seat, or are you willing to keep that seat vacant and lose that revenue? So that is the airline part of it. How do you control the price of the airfares? Well, there has to be transparency, and the people need to be informed about the pricing of the tickets. So as per the aircraft rules, 1937 DGCA has mandated in Rule 135 that all airlines need to publish their tariffs, the fares, in either two leading newspapers or on the website. So if you look through the website and search for tariffs, you will find the published tariffs. That will be broken down into 13 different fares, the maximum and the minimum. So that is what DGCA is monitoring and controlling. But daily spikes in the fare, where they jump up to beyond 40,000 or close to 50,000 on short sectors, that is kind of predatory pricing, which I think DGCA is not able to manage, control, or lagging behind in the real-time monitoring. So they're only monitoring the published fares. And if they find a fare which is beyond reasonable limits, so what is their authority is to ensure that reasonable profits are earned by the airlines. Now, if you go for the definition of reasonable profits, simply speaking, it is what the capital input is there and what are the returns. So if the fares are going high on account of fuel, obviously the airlines are looking for more returns, higher returns, and they have to increase the prices of the fares. So it is kind of not a transparent system how things work, and that is the general complaint from the passengers' point of view. From the safety angle, there is a regulation in the DGCA for airlines with weak financial results. So not making losses, but consistently, if you're making losses, then DGCA has to step in and check if safety standards are being compromised or not in terms of training of crew, maintenance aspects, which are the most important two things in terms of assuring safety. So again, for the past few years, we've seen SpiceJet compromising in a number of places, but the regulatory oversight is not as strong or robust to preempt or prevent safety issues. The head of operations of SpiceJet is under the scanner, the head of training is under the scanner, the head of safety is under the scanner. So what has the DGCA done about it? In the previous audits, the whole safety management system, the crew scheduling, so there have been n number of issues and major issues with that particular airline. So the regulator has to lead by example that this is acceptable or not acceptable. So that has to be defined very clearly for other airlines too, and the passengers for their confidence.
Yes, yes, absolutely. Parvez, in fact, just a short while back, Ajay pointed out how the current demand has not been affected. But going forward, we're assuming now that the prices continue to stay at this level, perhaps even inch up. At some point, do you think demand is going to be impacted, or is the pent-up demand too much for it to have a material impact on, as a result of these prices?
No, the demand is very good now, but we do not know how it will sustain. The other issue being that there is Akasa Air going to come into India very soon. It's going to start. Jetta has already started its operation or in the process of just starting operation. Tata Air India is going to be operating in a big way again. So very soon there are going to be a lot of surplus seats available. Now, my other fear is that and the airlines may be forced to bring down prices because of competition. My other fear is because of the cost of the dollar at the very high fuel costs, the airline should not in any way or any stage compromise on the engineering and the safety aspect, because that is a constant fear The DGCA does monitor the standards, but it's not possible for the DGCA to be everywhere. The DGCA does not have that large a team to take care of all aspects. So the airlines have to self-monitor their safety standards and engineering standards. So that always remains a fear. There have been a few incidents recently, you're aware, the last 2-3 months where very complicated issues have occurred. So that will always remain a fear that there should be no compromise as far as engineering and safety standards are concerned.
Yes, absolutely, Parvez. And I just wanted to, bring up that point that you just mentioned, the entry of the other two airlines as well at this point in time. Ajay, what is your own assessment of how that is likely to impact the landscape or the marketplace, so to speak? Do you think once again we'll see that kind of undercutting coming in terms of ticket prices? And if that happens, then once again we're talking about that additional financial burden on the airlines when their cost of, maintenance and fuel, etc., is extremely high.
Avni, I don't think the new airlines will be immediately impacting, the current players in the market. There are many reasons for that. One, when they come in, I think their primary lookout right now is to start operations. They will still need to build their, distribution capabilities. And they will still need to build a network where there will be some sort of a threat to any of the other existing carriers right now, So that's part one. And the second part, why they're not going to be immediately a concern is purely because, they will obviously get the benefit of doubt and people will try them out. But if they're only on, let's say, operating on Mumbai-Delhi, Mumbai-Bangalore, or Delhi-Bangalore, so on the prime trunk routes, then really, a lot of the incumbents are going to a lot of the other sectors where they're not flying. So we know that Akasa wants to, for instance, induct about 16 to 18 aircraft in the first year of operations itself. With Jet Airways, we don't know what their plans are at this point of time, apart from the fact that they want to restart in the next quarter. So, maybe 6 months down the line, 9 months down the line, Akasa might be a formidable competition. But I wouldn't say on day 1 or day 30 or day 60, there will be a formidable competition.
Okay. Amit, your perspective on the entry of these two airlines and what it might do in terms of the industry in India.
Well, it can be seen as an opportunity. If we look at the training aspect alone, training of pilots and training of personnel, in India, aviation is not institutionalized. We do not have institutions of the caliber of what we have abroad. So for the projected 900 aircrafts entering in the next 10 years, the entire expenditure would be close to about $1.5, $1.6 billion from ab initio training of pilots, recurrent training, command upgrades, and all other personnel. And 60% of this will be sent outside to other institutions, which is a big forex drain. So we need to develop infrastructure for training in India. And with so many airlines, we can have a mega training infrastructure which can cater for the entire subcontinent or beyond. So we still haven't looked at this. We are only looking at piecemeal growth and looking at outsourcing everything. So why not develop when maximum expansion has to happen in India? The infrastructure has to develop in India. We should have Indian training systems rather than picking up off the shelf from the West. So our Vedic style of training is more superior, and the West is coming back to it. Even Airbus is coming back to personalized training. So the way we used to train in Gurukul, so that Nidhi Dhyasan style of training is what is required and the need of the hour, even for safety, because EASA, the European regulator, has made a safety case that 70% of the pilots undergoing type rating do not have conceptual understanding of the subject. That is why we are having so many incidents. So our style of training is much superior, but we are, for some reason, looking west rather than looking east or looking within. So that needs to be done. All the airlines need to come together and under the ministry, under the umbrella, and build a mega infrastructure for that.
Right. Fair enough. In fact, some important points that you've raised as well. But I'm afraid we're out of time. I'd like to thank all of you for joining us with your perspective on this.